Hey, yeah, what? Grab your bootstraps, yeah, let's scale your growth. Here's the truth, Jack. We'll reach the globe, unveil the notes.
What the
fuck? Earn your digits, won't burn, you'll get it. See, this is factual. Funds will show, learn to flow with Candid Capital.
This is a Candid Capital interview. In these episodes, we host industry business professionals involved in the global tech ecosystem to discuss various topics related to tech, global economy, and building sustainable businesses and investments.
Welcome back to the Candid Capital podcast, filming this time here in Canada, the day before the anticipated NACO Summit, which for those of you who don't know, this is a national angel network event. And to kick off the week, I'm here with Jacopo Lasso, the Director General of the European Business Angel Network. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Josh, for having me.
Yeah, it's we just saw each other a couple months ago, and we were talking about doing a podcast out at Mobile World Congress. So
happy it happened. Yeah,
I'm happy we're able to get you over here on this side of the pond.
Definitely.
And this is your first time in Canada?
No, probably third or fourth trip over a lifetime. But it's my first time in a while. First time after the pandemic.
Okay. Have you been to Ottawa before?
Nope. First time in Ottawa.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
So we'll have to go check out some cool stuff later.
Yeah.
So just like how I like to set the stage usually is your origin story. So how did you get into the world of angel investment? And really what drew you towards working with entrepreneurs, investors, and more specifically technology? So
I've been always interested in this topic since university when I was studying management in Milan. Did a course on entrepreneurship. Thought it was going to teach me a bunch of things about starting a new company and all the likes. It kind of marginally did that. But then I said, okay, let's take another entrepreneurship course in university. Maybe the first one was bad. Maybe the second one is better. And that's where I discovered the world of venture finance. So it was not so much about starting a company. It was more about investing in companies. And I said, wow, that's really, really cool. It's attractive to me because there's a exciting component in the investment, meaning you don't really know how a venture is going to grow and how it will do over the years. So that is like huge uncertainty. And at the same time, it's exciting because you're investing in maybe a new technology that doesn't exist yet, that solves a problem that people have been scratching their heads for years on how to solve. And that got me interested in this world. And then through my university, I found an internship with the association I today run, EBAN, European Business Angel Network. So I started off with an internship in 2015, which then after a couple of months translated into the kind of full-time job position, and I was able to stay, and I'm still loving it every day. So that's a bit my story of how I was introduced in the world of startup investment.
So with the association, Europe's a big place. So, where did you start with? Was it like a particular angel group, or were you overseeing kind of investments for all the different EU member states?
Exactly, the second. So basically, EBAN is the association, the trade association for all angel investors in Europe. It's existed since 1999, and gradually over the years, it started to go from helping new and emerging networks of angels get up and running to the stage where it's at today, which is connecting angel networks between the different countries and driving cross-border and international investment activity. And when I started at EBAN in 2015, it feels like that wasn't way too long ago, but it actually in the world of startup and tech, that's quite some time. We began to see a growing interest from investors to not only invest in the best startups in their hometown, but to invest in the best startups in the given industry they're investing in, at least around the rest of Europe, especially in some countries that didn't have that great of an access to good deal flow. So it became very relevant, the activity that we were doing at EBAN to connect investors. So we built on that, first by doing some conferences, then by doing them bigger and better. And now, we're still a long way to go before having like a completely well-connected European ecosystem as angels, but we're getting there, I think, gradually.
So is it investment agnostic?
Yeah. So our network is investment agnostic, sector agnostic. We invest in startups at seed stages, like many business angels do. When I say we, I'm speaking on behalf of our members at IBAN, and the members at IBAN are clubs of business angels. And these clubs typically work at a city or sometimes at a national level, depending on which countries they're in. And yes, they're usually sector agnostic, and they're usually investing, though, in a specific moment of the startup's life cycle. Let's say a little bit after it has proven that its proof of concept or MVP is working, and before it becomes a bit more kind of structured and has traction in the market and so on.
So, in terms of the profile of types of angels, what are you seeing mostly in your network? Is it family offices? Is it professionals?
We're seeing a lot of, so it depends. Europe as a geography is also a little bit different depending where you are, especially between, let's call it more Western Europe and more Eastern Europe. There's a lot of history there that, for the sake of time, we won't go into. But Eastern Europe is a very young, typically young angel community. Young meaning less than 50, the average age. And people doing it as a hobby, more than a hobby, let's call it as a second activity, not a full-time activity. Meaning they still have a day job in many cases. So we're looking at, in the CEE region, Central Eastern Europe, a lot of the angels tend to be people that have still a full-time corporate job, usually in tech, sometimes in finance, or sometimes they're in the, let's call it services world, like lawyers or similar kind of professionals. And they're young, and they're investing the wealth that they've built up in this current lifetime. Very different in Western Europe. I think a lot of, definitely the angels tend to be a bit older. They're usually retired corporates or very often retired entrepreneurs that have exited the company. Maybe they sold something during the early 2000s. In some cases, could be even entrepreneurs a little bit older in age. In some cases, they're a little bit younger too, but we have some statistics on this topic. Western European angels tend to be a little bit older in age and tend to be doing angel investment also a bit more as a full-time kind of activity. So it's, yeah. The commonality, though, is that it's mostly a male-dominated space. Angels in Europe tend to be, I think, 90% of the cases men. In the clubs, I mean, people affiliated to the angel clubs, only 10% being women. Situation is more or less the same around the map of Europe, with some communities having maybe 1 or 2% better than the average and some having less. But it's a very male-dominated community.
Okay. So as you're here in Canada, you must have an opinion on, I guess, the differences between angels and angel networks here versus Europe.
Yeah, definitely. I first got to know the Canadian angel community in 2015 when I started at IBAN. That is more or less the time I was introduced to NACO, the National Angel Capital Organization, which is the trade body, the trade association, and the network here in Canada. And there's a lot in common, actually. I was expecting also, like, different continent, far away from Europe. It must be so super different, but long story short, it isn't that different. Meaning, the way angels are grouped in syndicates, that's very common in Canada, and that's also very common in Europe. So we understand that by being members of clubs, we can diversify and build better angel portfolios in less amount of time and with less amount of money, and have more angels around to help the companies that we invest in. So there's a lot of benefits to being in clubs, and we Europeans and the Canadians have, long ago understood the benefits of that. So that's in common. Now, the way deals are structured, I think that could be some, maybe a difference between what happens in Europe and what happens here in Canada. As far as I'm aware, here in Canada, it looks like groups are much more structured when they do deals as a syndicate. They have companies, they have sometimes funds. Many angel groups have programs like sidecar vehicle funds to co-invest with their members. So it's kind of more, to me, it feels a little bit more developed in terms of the infrastructure used to invest in startups, as opposed to what is more common in Europe. And again, Europe is, we can't really put it all in one basket, but There are, of course, communities that are much more evolved, yet there are still many communities that are not at all that evolved. And many times we see investors as angels invest directly in startups' cap tables. We see kind of more, let's call it a medieval age of how to do angel investment activity. So I would say, like, gut feeling, and from what I've been exposed to, it's a very professional community like the European one, but a bit more structured in how they invest. And maybe there's lots of reasons around that I'm not yet kind of aware of. Maybe if it's for fiscal reasons that these structures are used, or who knows. But anyways, we see them a little bit more popular.
I suspect we need an accountant on the podcast to answer that.
Maybe.
And so, do you think there's a notable investment strategy difference between angels in EU versus Canada?
I think in North America in general, I'm a little bit more kind of now generic on this geography, but I think there is a much sounder and more assimilated, like, people do this in their day-to-day much better than we do, which is tracking KPIs, metrics, looking at statistics, and then looking at your portfolio's performance over years. Like, I've been blown away by the data-driven approach to angel investment that is much more common here as opposed to Europe, where we don't have such a strong data collection culture. And we operate, yes, with, of course, some structure and some numbers to guide us, but I've been always blown away by how in North America the average investor has not only access to past data, but makes next investments also remembering a lot of what were good and what were bad investments done in the past. So that's, I think, a big difference. And I think it's either the people have it in them that are much more focused in tracking and measuring and reporting their own investment activity to themselves, because that's what angels do. They invest their own money. So this is why maybe sometimes we try to, I don't know, approach it less kind of formal way and less structured way. But for sure, a lot of the insights that you get from data on your past investments help you a lot avoid making mistakes in the new investments you make. So I've been seeing, like, lots of great reports coming from the US correlating things like the distance between you and the founder on the success of the company over time, or a way, for example, to measure how important it is to mentor and be close to your founders. So lots of interesting insights on there that I don't think we do so well in Europe.
Do your angels then spend less time on due diligence and valuation?
Perhaps in the sense, I think on the I think due diligence and valuations don't necessarily kind of always go hand in hand with what I've said, but I do think that they have less insights on what they've done in the past because they're tracking it differently, looking at it a little bit differently, as opposed to what I've seen so far here. The amount of time spent on due diligence, I don't expect that to be hugely different. But I do see that when new companies are being looked at, and they're being looked at from points of view like kind of the generic points of view of the company. How many people are in the founder team? How many years have they been active? How many patents do they have filed? Like, there's a lot more understanding of numbers around these topics and these considerations, looking at past investments done, than for sure I've ever seen in Europe.
So one of the criticisms I would say that some people might say about Canadian angels, because we're always comparing ourselves to the Americans. So
naturally,
is that Canadian angels have a much lower risk tolerance. And so as a result of that, many of them operate and act like VCs.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Which in theory is not necessarily good for your startup ecosystem from the point of view of at that stage that an angel would come in. The founder would very much likely not have product market fit yet. and wouldn't have the numbers to really having that kind of a request from an investor and kind of needing all that information, time, and investment. Whereas in the US, it's kind of like, is it a good idea? Can I see the path to success? And let's go grab a beer and talk. I think that is maybe kind of the dynamics that I would say Canadian angels are criticized for, which is why I was kind of wondering how deep in Europe do they go in on each deal on the analysis?
So whenever angels are investing through a fund structure, kind of like the example you were making, they're beginning to behave more like VCs because effectively they are becoming a VC. So a VC is basically fund management team made up by professionals managing and investing other people's money. And you can replicate that same exact dynamic also in an angel club. You can have some of your more experienced angels, the ones that have been around for many years, that have many good deals and a good track record. Okay, they can become kind of your fund management team. And all the other angels in your community can become LPs, small ticket holders in your fund. When this dynamic comes in, that you're allocating your money in somebody else's hands to be managed, that person managing it starts to become a little bit more kind of structured in their decision making and what they do. And often that becomes kind of what you were alluding to, a kind of a behavior that's asking for tons of information, numbers and stuff from startups, which they don't have, and therefore maybe then investing later stage, right? So we say, okay, let's invest in something then when it will have traction and all these numbers we want to see. So could be the case that more than a risk aversion of the average Canadian towards losing money in a startup investment, I think it's more the dynamic of the fund management team managing the LP's money that brings this risk aversion a little bit up, just because we want to make sure we don't lose all these people's money that they gave us in trust that we're going to do something good with it. So I think that's the dynamic happening. Europeans are very risk adverse, believe me, very, very risk adverse. I think it's kind of a historic cultural thing that, I hope you will have a good sociologist or anthropologist on the show one day to say a little bit more about this topic. As a gut feeling, I think we're more risk adverse. It's kind of clear, I think, from tons of statistics that point to, Europeans investing less in stock market, more in bonds, buying more real estate property as secure investment, as opposed to speculating on the stock exchange, on derivatives or stuff like that. Like, we have it a little bit more, I think, embedded and coded in our DNA as society that, like...
So you don't have any Bitcoin in cold storage?
No, we have, well, for sure, there's don't get me wrong, but like the... Look, there's there's about 300,000 business angels active all over the European continent, out of which only 30,000 or so are part of an angel club. In the US, I think there's over 300,000 or so angels part of bands and structures. And if you compare the population of Europe as a continent and US, is not very, very different, the numbers. So like that number alone kind of should indicate that, yeah, people here and in this part of the world have it a little bit more in them to take risk as opposed to Europe. Yeah. But definitely what you were, I think, commenting on before, for me, speaks more about like just the way angels invest becoming more and more VC-like to make better decisions that you can defend in front of your LPs one day. Yeah, and you can say, well, we followed all of our, great logic and our investment thesis. We didn't deviate at all from all these things we must see before signing a check. So they do it a little bit for that, to then report to their LPs why we ended up investing in this as opposed to that. And just the natural dimension that when it's not your own money you're investing somebody else's. Oh my goodness, what happens if I lose it? So it's just that kind of comes into play.
Yeah, from the other side of it, as the entrepreneur, there's good and bad, I think, that could come out of it. I think the good thing is the level of expectations from startup founders higher.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll have to have their shit together. But I also think that it might create sort of a difficulty for critical capital that's required to get stuff off the ground. And especially since a lot of ideas, they might not seem like good business models when you're looking at it from a VC point of view that early in the development of the product, solution, or business. So I think we kind of have those two things. We have sort of the formalizing of expectations for new startups and founders. And then on the other side of it is we could have a sort of a capital deficit, you could call it, for innovation.
It's true. I mean, I think angels have a lot of that been there, done that experience, and the industry know-how, because maybe they built up a successful career or a startup that became a decent business over time in a sector. And when an angel kind of lets go of that personal expertise and background and stops using it, then I'm sorry, it's not a smart investor anymore, right? We call them smart investors because that's what they bring to the table. From the moment they stop being smart in the sense adding value after the investment, but before investment, using those expert eyes to see through and understand if this is a good entrepreneur solving a big problem with something that may or may not work, but we like the entrepreneur a lot. When that kind of disappears and gets kind of lost behind spreadsheets and Excels and like numbers and so on, I think that's when we make bad investments. Like, honestly, I think I hear it often, and I've invested also in a few startups myself. Like, it's been so much about the person, the founder, and like, do you like the person? Do you think they're able to get there? Maybe they will need to pivot. Do you think they will have good ears to listen when it's time to change and do something about it? Like, we start to build up a sense of confidence that we have a team with an amazing vision that is working on a technology that, maybe I think it is going to work, but who knows? We don't have yet product market fit, so it could be viable. Maybe there's some signal, some proof of viability that we can pick up, but we never really know if this is going to be the next big thing or not. But we like the person. Like, this person demonstrates determination, resilience. They listen. We like to judge, or at least all the angels I know and all the angels that make really good investments are the ones that basically decide to invest or not a lot on who the founder is, the founding team, and do they click?
And I would agree with you on that, especially at that stage. And I think maybe this is a good way to segue into the hottest topic of angel or investment in Canada right now. I would say maybe not a hot topic in a positive way, but we have to bring up capital gains tax.
Whew, yeah, I heard about it. Yeah, it's horrific. Yeah, it's really bad.
So
they're increasing it, and how much is the increase?
It's increased. It's going to be increased to 67%.
6-7.
Yes.
So all the capital gain is poof.
From 50% to 67%.
It was 50 before.
Yeah.
Pretty brutal. Also 50.
What is it in Europe?
I mean, in Italy, where we like taxes a lot, it's I think it's 25 or maybe 27.5, one of the two.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And you look at me like, wow, that's amazing. Which is, and I used to live in Belgium, where taxes are brutal, but zero capital gains tax. And when my accountant told me this, I'm like, why? Like, in a country that likes to tax everything that lives and moves and breathes, then the capital gain tax is zero. And the guy was like, yeah, because we attract a lot of wealthy retiring people that decide to first move here and then sell the company business or sell the stock they had invested and then reinvest it here. So anyways, but sorry, back to you. 67%.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, we could go into a whole lot of things and looking at it in general of how terrible that is for everyone. But to narrow it down specific to just venture and technology and innovation, I was kind of wondering how that is going to work for getting successful entrepreneurs to become angels, or for LPs to put their gains back into the subsequent funds. But I wasn't expecting that you were at 23%.
Yeah, 25
or
or
25%.
27, yeah.
So I didn't think Europe was so much lower, but I'm guessing every country is a different.
Sure, every country in the EU has its own fiscal regime. Like I was saying, Belgium is a country in the EU at 0 on capital gains. I mean, on your other income, believe me, it's horrific. But on just the capital gains, it's not so bad, and it applies to anything. Like, could be the capital gain you get on the house you just sold. Could be the capital gain on the stock you just sold, on that family-owned business you've had for 5 generations that you've just sold. Whatever it is, it's 0, which is amazing. I mean, that was like, I wasn't expecting that. But the repercussion, it doesn't sound very good. I think there is hope always when politicians decide to do funny things for votes. I don't know if you have elections coming soon, but it feels like one of those.
I think most of the world is going through elections within next 18 months, I think. So there's going to be a whole wave of changes, I think.
And this is like one of those, it feels to me like one of those things where like a government does, I'm Italian, we change government every year. So like speaking by experience, like there comes a moment in the season of politicians where you do something that is a bit populist, that may raise you tons of votes from one side, piss off a bunch of other people on the other side that don't vote for you. But it feels like one of those moves to, like, social justice, tax the rich, that they're making all this money off
for sure.
capital.
I mean, that is the type of government that we have now.
That's too bad.
But I would also say that they have put some stuff in there that makes it sound like it's not so bad for the average person.
Okay.
Because I guess if you make less than, I think it's 250,000, you won't be subject to the 67%
as an annual income.
For the investment.
So if the
So if the capital gains is under a certain amount, and then you have sort of like a ceiling amount that will put you at the 50% rate. Again, I can't recall all the details, but the thing is, outside of the individual. If we're just looking at it from a sectoral point of view, that's not good for angel investments. That's not good for VC. And then why make tech here?
Yeah, that's a good argument. And there's a really big market right next door to you, which could benefit a lot from that migration of tech talent and some money maybe that would be invested through either offshore structures or, definitely it's not great news for our community and for anybody in tech or in venture or in startups. And even the people that are starting a small business get really punished by this increase.
For sure, you could spend your whole life building a car garage and then decide to sell it for your retirement. And 67% of that is going to a business partner you weren't aware of.
Yeah, it's a huge share. That was right. When you said that number, I couldn't believe it. I was about to fall from the stool here.
Well, one newspaper did say, well, it's not so bad. We had 75% in the early 90s.
Great.
Because the economy hasn't changed at all since the early 90s. It's not like we've had a NAFTA agreement.
Yeah.
It's not like, a global economy got built and technology proliferated.
Yeah, that's terrific. Look, what I was going to say earlier is sometimes these measures, they stay on as long as the government in place is able to justify them and so on. So it may be, hopefully, I hope for you, it may be something that is just like for a little bit of time now, this aggressive and high tax that maybe will win over some votes. And then as soon as stuff turns around the other way, though.
Well, it's created revenue generation, and I get that.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering if this is a trend. So my question really in relation to that is like for Europe, and I understand that you might not know every single country and what they're doing, but is there an appetite to be increasing capital gains tax across that region?
No, as a blunt answer applicable to 27 different European countries and a couple more that are not part of EU know. Because in the sense, there are countries that have the need to raise certain taxes. For example, VAT, the sales tax, tends to be adjusted quite frequently around countries. Some countries have like 24%, 25%. Which is, in my opinion, it's just crazy. But anyways, but on the capital gain side, not that I'm aware of. Actually, the opposite is starting to happen, which is good, which is that government finally realizes that certain investments and certain innovation and entrepreneurial activity should be exempted from these rather harsh and quite invasive taxes that are levied when somebody is successful. So my country, Italy, I think introduced a couple years back now a exemption from taxes for tech investments. Then you need to kind of qualify as a tech investment. It's a lot easier said than done, but at least the government is starting to like say, okay, these are certain things that we should incentivize. Like the UK, for example, since the early 80s, has a special regime for startups and investments in startups. It's called the Enterprise Investment Scheme, or the Small Enterprise Investment Scheme for the variation applicable for the startups. And what it does is wonderful for the investors, but also for the entrepreneur. When things go well, the tax gain is less. When things go bad, which happens quite often in the world of VC investing, as an individual, you get to roll over the tax loss, the investment loss, and deduct the loss from your bottom line of taxes payable at the end of the year. So this is good. I mean, it gives the incentive. We were talking earlier about being risk adverse and so on. So government is saying, please, people, don't invest only in the really safe assets like the bonds, which we will tax you a lot. The dividends are taxed. When you sell, the capital gain is taxed. And don't do the equity either too much because it's too safe of bets. Go in the really riskier areas. And I think that's positive. So we get kind of rewarded for wanting to take a little bit extra risk. Yeah, and I feel for the community here that's actually...
So are you getting more... I guess would you say there's been a growth of foreign venture funds because of this?
Foreign, so you get taxed in the residency you declare it as your residency in the jurisdiction where you declare your residency. So as a foreign investor coming into Europe, it's not so much about the taxes you can save, in my opinion. It's just that you get more company for the same money. So valuations in Europe compared to US, where most of our foreign investors are coming from, they're coming from North America. They come to Europe because of access to good tech, deep tech especially, science-driven innovation, and cheaper valuations on the company. So you get more bang for the buck, so to say. And depends which field or which sector you're in, but definitely in science related, I think there's a lot of easier wins for foreign VCs. But I wouldn't kind of correlate that so much with the tax discussion. What has happened though, as a result of better policy, better fiscal incentives, is that more people are pursuing startup ventures as a career, as opposed to kind of, playing it safer and going for the corporate job or the easier kind of jobs, 9-to-5 jobs that there's not much risk entailed. So it's good, I guess. I mean, we have huge unemployment issues in many parts of Europe, so it's good that people are seeing this as a, kind of incentive to give it a go, and you risk failure, but at least you don't get bashed with taxes in the meantime.
So I guess this can move us into innovative models for syndicates and angel groups. So are you seeing something different emerging?
We're definitely seeing more syndicates than ever before. So special purpose vehicles set up to invest in the startup, pooling angels We're seeing a lot more of these being done with software solutions, offshore setups. There's a player called Carta, which I'm sure exists. They entered Europe also some years ago, and that has definitely accelerated a lot. The syndication activity and the use of relatively cheap structures to pool together angels, and to do that in a very good, tax transparent, and anti-money laundering compliant way. So there's been that trend, and that has picked up hugely with the pandemic. I think has allowed the adoption of more kind of, let's call them, digital solutions all across the board, and angel syndication has also benefited from those software solutions. And speaking of software solutions, you get to see also more angel groups using softwares to look at deals, share the deals with their members, with other co-investors. It's becoming a little bit more technology-driven way of investing. That's definitely happening. We had a big European Union law on crowdfunding, which has allowed a crowdfunding company from a country of the EU to have investors all over the European Union with the same license they got in their home country. So we have kind of like a explosion a little bit of this of these crowdfunding platforms where, okay, it's not right in my opinion to call them angels, because a lot of people that invest are purely just putting in a little bit of money and not anything else. But it has kind of increased, I think, the popularity and the level of interest from your ordinary person around the world.
Well, what is an angel ticket range
in Europe?
Yeah,
it also here depends by country, but I would say 25,000 euros, so around 30,000 Canadian, is kind of your average ticket as a person in a new company round, average. And then you have many communities which maybe 10K is your average ticket. Some communities where you have to step it up a little bit because just the price of startups is more expensive where you are. But would say 30-some thousand Canadian as average. Some people are able to put a bit more, maybe 100K, 150K in each round that they do, something like that.
And is there a I would say, what is the hot or technology preference? And not AI.
No.
I see that as an augmenting tech, not a specific one, unless someone is investing in deep tech AI, which in case I don't think you're doing it for 25K.
No. Well, I mean, in Europe, it's these are the three industries. It's fintech, number one. ICT, which is a really old-fashioned way of calling anything that's like software-driven companies. So especially B2B SaaS is like predominant. So I would say number two, health and digital health solutions are coming in at number three. By the way, it's like something like 15, 14, 13%, these top three. So they make up about 50% of the sectors are those three basically. And then the rest is kind of a lot of different things that are being invested in. One of the more trending sectors I'm seeing is agriculture and food technologies, space where innovation has not really penetrated so much in these industries. Of course it has.
So like when you say agriculture,
farming solutions and cultivating it without intensive use of resources, less water, no light, no chemicals, like all of these innovations happening in how you grow foods, but also then innovations in new foods produced in laboratory or vegetable based.
I hope you guys don't ruin
plant-based.
your food.
I hope so too. Yeah, I'm a big foodie, and like I look at these things, and like a part of me says, "Oh my goodness, I would never eat that in my life." But
because I can tell you, this anecdote, and I've heard it from so many Canadians, is like there's things you eat here that you don't really feel good after eating, and those same things in Europe for some reason does not have the same effect.
Okay.
I couldn't tell you what or why, but definitely your bread is different.
bread
for
is,
sure. Your bread or your carbohydrates are completely different than whatever we're eating here.
Okay, that's good to know.
For the most part.
Yeah,
So,
we have in Europe. Look, I know that it's a very regulated area, farming and food and all this stuff, but lots of innovation in food tech and agri-tech, at least compared to the past. And then this green transition. Europe is trying to lead the world in something relevant, which is solving the environment crisis, climate change, and similar. And we're trying to do a lot in a short amount of time when it comes to energy. You know, we're super dependent on Russian oil, which for many good things, it's a great idea to get rid of and start, phasing out of our energy consumption. But we need to make up for it. It's cold in Europe in the winter, especially in the north of Europe, which is pretty dependent on Russian gas. So we're gonna try to accelerate as much as possible the renewables, energy, solar. Is a big renewable for us, and also wind. So there's going to be a lot of this, but then it's also like, how can we modernize our buildings to have a less of a CO2 footprint? How can mobility has also changed a lot in Europe, and even how cities allow now access to vehicles and what vehicles are in it. Like, it's really changing. At the beginning, it felt more like blah, 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 that we got to do something about the planet, blah, 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 blah. In 30 years, we need to do this and that, blah, 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 blah. Time goes by, nothing happened. At the beginning, I would say it felt a little bit like that, but definitely since the war in Ukraine and a little bit even earlier when the prices of energy were starting to like skyrocket, and like this is problematic for many people, that has accelerated a lot. This interest, even in the tech world, for the green transition, and then a ton of public money is being dumped into this industry. So you can get lots of grant funding for these kind of startups. You can get lots of public co-investment in the startups that are doing green innovations. You can get, in some countries, tax deductions, important tax deductions on those investments you make. So like, we're trying to do our best here to lead and address probably one of humanity's biggest problems with entrepreneurship and with investment. But, we need also the rest of the world to collaborate a little bit on solving that issue. But yeah, that's those two, clean tech, energy tech, agri-food, and they're all related to the climate and environment. Those are the ones most trending.
Yeah, I'd say we're probably in around the same boat.
Okay.
I mean, at least from, I guess, an industry level point of view of where the government is putting incentives and money into.
That's good.
But yeah, SaaS is still going to be big here. I don't think our fintech is as big as yours would be.
Fintech very broadly intended, also insurance tech and okay.
I mean, especially if you're gonna, depends if you're lumping in the UK or not. With Europe, I guess.
We lump in UK, of course. Yeah. Otherwise, we would look ridiculous.
So if you're lumping them in, they definitely are our fintech sector. I wouldn't say is at the same place. But SaaS is big. We do have agritech here as well. But I think a lot of the agritech, there's more of sort of the data science side of it, I think. Where you're really trying to have all the data points of the entire ecosystem project or whatever you're growing, and then kind of like implementing that. So I think there's a whole software side for that. There's always going to be chemicals, and we did invest in manufacturing food in a lab. I'm not a big fan of that in general.
I think difficult to go to market, but yeah.
I think we should be going the other direction, maybe just better farming. As opposed to, I don't think there is a healthy, fully manufactured product that exists. I mean, it's just whether you find out 20 years or 5 years or 40 years later that you shouldn't eat that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's 100% with you. There's a lot in this part of the world that is not super regulated around food and around what we eat and how we produce it, for many reasons. But it would be very good.
I would say there's one reason.
Yeah.
NAFTA.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. It doesn't make the playing field level. You see, that's what we there's a lot of good and bad things about the European Union, and like we're finding them out now in these moments of difficulty. Like, what do we do if somebody invades us? Oh crap, we don't have an army. Should we have an army? Okay, let's make an army for the EU now. Like we have many problems as a European Union, but one good one was that in order to be a member of the European Union and benefit from a lot of the funding that you can get from the European Union, you got to play by European Union rules, which are rather ethical and pretty good. I mean, of course, there's a bunch of people also upset in Europe about what we're allowing industry to do and the pollution we're still accepting, and the fact that gas is considered a green energy source, natural gas, not oil. But there's a lot of dilemma and so on. But I think what has been cool with the European Union is this kind of level playing field, so that you can't make, I don't know, potatoes in Romania in one way and in Belgium some other way, and have different use of chemicals and things that can harm people in one place and you know, another set of rules in another. And that's obviously, it comes at a price.
I think I think the evidence is already there that Monsanto probably wasn't a good idea. Hopefully I don't get sued. But I mean, like, when you look at a lot of the food production here, especially cheap food production, because that's always the reason is we need to be able to feed as many people as possible, right?
It's got to be cheap. Yeah.
But our food supplies, like for a population of 38 million, I don't think that argument really stands up. And if you really follow at least the more manufactured type food as opposed to, we'll say, natural farming.
Yeah.
It's all chemical companies.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Like, it's all companies that their main business was chemicals and they got into food.
People will wake up at some point.
So, again, that's why I'm not excited about food tech or anything to do with growing stuff in a lab. If you're doing it for space, sure, okay.
But more people like you are becoming aware about the good and the bad of the food they put in their mouth for their health. And I think that level of awareness then will translate. It takes time, though, to be seen, but it will translate to people wanting better kind of food. And unfortunately, like, it's one of those things that it will discriminate a lot depending on where you're in society. But healthy food shouldn't cost a fortune compared to processed and unhealthy food.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, we could probably go into this topic for another hour.
But we don't have the time.
But I'm just going to pull us back into angel investing here.
Yes, absolutely.
And I mean, we could talk about angel investing in food. That's fine too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But if we go down this rabbit hole, we'll be here all night for sure. So for your approach to angel investing, because you mentioned you've done some of your own investing, what criteria are you looking for? And I would say, like, what criteria are you sharing with your angels when considering whether to invest in a startup?
I try to look a lot at the founder and the founding team and the motivations around what they are doing and why they're doing it. That is, for me, like a pretty big thing to get to the bottom of, because unfortunately, in startups, you hit a lot of bumps down the road. And if the people in the company are resilient and motivated in the right way, they will overcome a lot of those bumps in the road and figure it out. And it never happens when when the motivations are not aligned. So, and I'm saying, like, I love to see founders that are solving a problem that they've lived through. Like, there's like this personal attachment to an issue, but maybe it's a sickness they're looking for a cure for, or some like mobility solution or whatever it is. But like they have this personal link or to the problem they're trying to solve.
So a non-financial motive.
Yeah. No. And stay away. And for me, like, stay away from the people that only tell you, like, oh, because I want to get rich and make a lot of money and like be super. No, don't. Like, they won't be the ones. Probably.
So more impact and mission driven.
It's more, why are you doing all of this stuff? Like, you're a smart person. You could easily get a job from 9 to 5 in any company you want and get a good salary and get paid. But no, you're deciding to go down the most difficult career paths, probably with the highest level of failure, probably. Why? And the story needs to add up. Like, in the sense, the motivation behind it needs to be very clear and strong for me. If it isn't, and like, oh, because we think this is a great market that's going to grow, this is a great opportunity and we're grasping it, like, not enough. Because the moment where this opportunity is slippery and you're not grasping it, and then you look and you ask yourself, like, maybe I should take that 9-to-5 job that was on the table there a month before I started the startup idea. So look, the motivation is a big one for me, and getting a good feeling of the entrepreneur, for whatever heck that means. But like, I like people that listen and pay attention, and when I ask them a question, they're pretty spot on and they don't kind of wiggle themselves around it. And like, so I like that, and the honesty comes through. There's a lot of these softer things that I try to look at, and it's not just me. Like, I try to follow people that are also, been there and done angel deals for a while, and they can try to help me see and read between the lines. But there's a big part of that, definitely. I like startups that operate in markets that are not overly crowded with already a ton of other competitors doing the same thing. So my investments are actually all in space tech. So something really, really not for everybody.
Oh, so you're doing all the cool stuff then?
Yeah, but we're doing really the cool stuff. Well, no, but it is cool. So I have a few which are really cool. So people doing rocket ships and with capsules that latch on and to the space station and become laboratories, like really cool stuff. And it deep tech in space, not. There's a few others which are more satellite observation and data, but I like this industry first because I have a great network in this industry. I have a great mentor, angel, that is in this industry, and I like that this industry is a commercially competitive space, but it's just now starting to open up as an industry after a history of, I don't know, 50, 60 years of only public presence in space. So all of the NASA, the ESA in Europe, like, these are the public players that have historically been the innovators in space and the people that operate in this space. And now since the past 10 or so years, this has completely changed.
So what, because like the space tech is very broad.
Yeah.
So like, is there a particular segment in the space tech that excites you or that you're interested in?
Well, I like the craziest one, which is exploration.
Yeah.
Exploration beyond Earth. Yeah, this is really, like, it has besides a really nice kind of romantic feel around it, for sure. But it's
So are you just trying to get a SpaceX ticket?
Yeah,
Is that
yeah.
really what you're doing?
It's interesting because to build technologies that work in space, you need to have done quite a long time in research and development, and you build up a pretty good competitive advantage measured in years.
A lot of IP as well,
and a ton of IP.
Yeah,
and I like that because it means we have less competitors. Like in B2B SaaS, amazing. You can do a business overnight, scale it to billions overnight. It's true. You and 1,000 other people are in this same city with that same idea, trying to be the quickest one to go mainstream and to have the huge traction. No, so that doesn't apply though to space. And the beautiful thing about space is almost every country around the world is starting to look at space as a strategic industry their country should be in. And whether it is satellites that orbit around space or building some extraterrestrial presence of your country in space, like, that's now becoming super, super important for so many countries. Like, you have big giants like China, India, etc., that are operating in space, pretty advanced technology levels, but you have a ton of other players like Saudi Arabia even that's developing space programs. And the cool thing is that all of these countries potentially can become exit possibilities for small startup investments and innovations in this industry that can get sold off or do joint ventures with these countries.
I didn't even think it was possible as an angel to get in on space tech. So
Yeah.
that's pretty. That's
well,
pretty
you have to kind of swallow a little bit the pill of not having any traction at all and being several years away from operation.
It's a quantum tech investment, basically.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say something like in biotech that like, okay, maybe in 10 years we'll have the cure, but okay, come in today because it's your only moment to come in. If you come in after market validation, so valuations for you as an angel will be completely out of this world. Yeah.
So moving on, do you have any advice for aspiring angels or someone looking to get into angel investing?
Yeah, a lot, but I'll try to just limit to one is don't do this by yourself, regardless of how smart you think you are, regardless of how wealthy you are and how much money you can lose. Don't do this by yourself, because angel investing is so much more enjoyable, rewarding financially and from a human point of view when done in groups. So my advice, don't angel invest by yourself. Join a club. Find a group of people that you like hanging out with. Make that group of people your usual network of co-investors you share deals with and you co-invest with. And it's just more enjoyable way of doing it. You learn a lot more from other people's experiences. You start to develop your own knowledge of what to do, how to do it in a much more enjoyable way. Like, this is the word that keeps popping in my head every time. It is much better, and it can get more rewarding, of course, as well, because established angel groups are more like a magnet and they attract better startups to them, as opposed to you being, some pretty wealthy guy that, okay, has for sure some visibility and network, but I doubt you get approached by the startups in town like an established investor does. When you're new on the block, in general, yeah, it's less easy to get good deal flow. But so, yeah, that's the list can go on, and I have like another dozen or so if you want, but like, don't invest by yourself, do it in a club, and you'll get tons more out of it, and you'll have a lot of fun too. So
yeah, that was the part I picked up on. The fun.
Yeah.
So this is the part where we kind of move to just the general random questions. So the first one up is, what are you currently reading? And if you're not reading anything, what's your favorite book?
I read a book by a friend of mine who unfortunately is in a very advanced stage of cancer, and decided to write a very touching book about his life and all of as an angel investor. This guy's also a very good angel investor, probably one of the better ones around Europe, and he wrote a really lovely book about his successful experiences and as an angel, but also his very unsuccessful experiences as a person. So it was interesting to kind of read this autobiography from a man who says has only about 500 or so days left in his life. So that's the latest one.
Oh, well,
yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that, but
yeah.
I mean, it's always nice to at least get the word of your life out there.
It's true.
Autobiographies are the best. I think it's one of the ways to give back, from a lifetime of whatever you've done.
Exactly why the guy wrote it.
Yeah, it's cool. So productivity hacks or tools.
Yeah.
Which is the one you can't live without?
Productivity hacks. I like to be rather alone, undisturbed, and in a deep dive when I work. I've always been like that for some reason at university. I never used to go to like the library to study with all the people around, and like I would just like lock myself up in a room, be very focused, and that kind of stayed on with me. And with this easy to implement for me technique, I don't drag my working days on and on and on and on and on way too much. And in general, I'm not very productive in the evening, so I just try to like start on the right foot in the morning, be very focused, no interruptions, and try to muscle out a good day, and then at 6 or 7 call it a day, and start again the next day like that. But no breaks, no random coffee, no 15-minute break thing, no, just like work. And that's the only way I can get into a really good, productive mindset. I just need to be like in a cage and doing it.
And what software tool can't you live without? Like, are you using something to make sure that you're able to do those deep states? Are you having a reminder? Are you having something that helps manage your time during
I'm
that?
horrible at this, Josh. I mean, I'm in tech and like this is
You don't use-
I'm super old school from that point of view. Like, I mean, I use email, I have calendar, etc. I use chats and so on to speak with the team, and but
So to give you an example.
yeah, but what like
Like I could live without email. I hate email. I think it's terrible.
I could not. No.
I much prefer chat applications as opposed to email.
Absolutely. I get the question better. Yeah, I could not survive without email. All of my professional activity is almost entirely channeled through email. I try to even limit the LinkedIn stuff and the exchanges there. Like at one point, I start to understand that if I keep all of these communication channels open, I'm just gonna be like, covering all the bases at somehow, some way with responding to this, to that, these notifications. This thing kind of gets me anxious a little bit. So I try to like channel everyone to go through my email at some point. Like after the second LinkedIn message where I get a feeling like this is going to drag on and on and on for a while, like put you in the email, you go through there, and then I won't miss you and I won't forget the notification that arrived or anything like that.
Okay. Health and wellness. Do you have, I guess, an app or a tool or something to help keep you honest on that, or do you have a strategy for it?
Yes.
We're still figuring it out.
No, not really. I've always been very fortunate that I'm healthy and that mentally and physically, and I have had some more stressful moments in life, and sometimes this stress was a lot, and it kind of affected me for brief moments of time. But no, my no, again, I'm old school. No apps, no nothing like this too much. But I like to exercise in the morning. First thing I do in the morning, I exercise. Yeah, and then I get ready for work, and then I go into my kind of tunnel vision work mode, and then and that's how I stay physically, kind of healthy. I mean, I couldn't run a marathon or anything like this. Don't get me wrong. Like for those,
I don't think any of us can.
no. Well, no. There's a lot
planning for it.
There's a lot of people I admire that like they're in like a shape. My goodness, like when you're in your early 20s and you're like a beast, and there's a bunch of people in their 30s and 40s and 50s which somehow, some way manage to just keep themselves and are very disciplined in keeping themselves.
Apparently,
so
it's
good.
Getting up at 4:30 a.m.
It is, and I can't deal with that. But I do squeeze in like a good, not much, half an hour a day, very methodical. Can't live without it. I have to do it, and it gives me energy, the stamina I need, and I think it kind of goes also with my brain. Like everything is healthy if you keep care of your body. Your head also kind of stays healthier.
So, last question.
Oh boy.
It's not like that. We're not. I'm not going to ask your political views.
Oh, okay. No, you can ask what you want. Yeah, go for it.
I'm just kidding. So, if you could go back in time and give yourself one piece of professional advice, what would it be?
That's a really nice question. Fire people earlier.
I was not expecting that.
Yeah.
Could you expand on that?
Yeah, I've always tried to fix people and motivate them and go always the extra mile to find different ways to keep people motivated. And only realized since a couple of years that not everybody in life is motivated professionally. So instead of waiting and waiting and waiting for someone that is not your ideal team member to wake up and become your ideal team member, get rid of them. And it's a bit brutal. I'm in charge of a team that's small. It's 8 of us. It's painful in a small team when you let somebody go. And sometimes it's difficult to find a good replacement. But the lesson I could have taught myself 10 years ago when I started, as opposed to, is this one. Get rid of those people early. Like,
It's actually really good advice when you actually think about it. I think it's also good for them.
it's good for everybody
Like
because they really live like a half nightmare for a while. Like they're living a life they don't like. They're not working well because they don't like what they're doing. You try to kind of like over motivate them and either pay them more, give them more responsibility, and it's still because it's the motivations are not something you can create. The people need to bring those out somehow, some way. So for me, and I don't want to sound like a bad guy. I've had issues getting rid of people in my team because I've always been wanting to believe in them and to try to bring out something great in them that I thought I saw or thought you knew how to do or whatever. But it's just so much better to let everybody move on, and let people go and just and it hasn't been like you're fired, get out of here. No, it's been more like, okay, I understand this is not for you. And then the person says, yeah, it's true, it's not for me. Okay, fine, then go and we'll give you some time to find your next place to go. So it's not bad. Like it's not like terminating somebody and then, oh my goodness, this person, I just kicked them out on the street, and now how are they going to make a living out of their life? No. It's not like that. In Europe, it's not like that because we have a good social system. So even if you lose a job, you can stay unemployed and with an income for a while, 1 or 2 years, depending which country you're in. But yeah, fire people earlier. And a lot of the angels also told me this, like, hire slow, fire fast. It's true. Don't go on a hiring spree and just dump people into a company because more people equal more productivity, equal better result. No. Hire slow, like be super sure the people you bring in, that they're aligned, they're motivated, that they're interested, besides being competent, besides being all the other stuff that needs to make sense. But let them go let them go. Like be quick in understanding if good, no good, and then be honest and just move on. I stayed with several people in my team far too long. And this sucks because it sends a message to also the rest of the team that, okay, man, then we can be like, we can be dragging our feet more or be with an attitude or be like, it's no good. Just get rid of people faster.
Oh, no, that makes sense. I think that's some really good advice. Yeah. So now we're at the part where if there's anything that you would like to promote or let the audience know about, if you have a channel to follow, anything to that.
Well, no, if you love angel investing and you want to make your way into the European market, EBAN is the name. EBAN, European Business Angel Network. We're here to connect you. We're here to introduce you to other communities of investors around Europe. You can learn something from us. For sure, we'll learn also something for you. So I would promote the organization I run, and we're always very open and welcoming with anyone that is genuinely interested in making angel investing and having a good time while doing it.
Yes, always a good time in Barcelona.
It is. It's true. I hope to see you then next year then in Barcelona again.
I'll be there once again. So thanks for coming on and doing this podcast today.
Thanks, Josh, for having me. It's been a pleasure.
All right.
You can find information about the Candid Capital podcast on the website, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Episodes can be found on Spotify and other podcast platforms. A quick reminder that this is infotainment and is not intended to be professional advice, malicious, or hateful. The views, information, or opinions expressed during the podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not represent those of employers, partners, and their subsequent connected private and public associations or organizations.
We candid. I hope you understand it. Your business growth, we planned it, yeah. This ain't for show, we stamped it, yeah. Yeah, no FOMO, everyone come join, no solo. This all factual, from me to you, this candid capital.